r/ask Reddit. What did a teacher do that made you automatically gain respect for them? I had a professor that made it crystal clear that if we ever made an appointment and didn't show up, he'd take 5 points off of our final grade. I tried to find him during office hours and he wasn't available. I told him that I deserved an extra 5 points because he wasn't available when he said he would be, and he gave it to me in the interest of fairness. People who stay true to their teachings are always great, provided that their teachings are moral. People who stay true to their teachings are always great. Sweet, I can do that, provided that their teachings are moral. Damn it, there's always a catch, isn't there? In my first year of high school, my class decided to play a simple prank on our English SOS teacher by all laughing when he faced the board, and then stopping every time he turned around to face us. After a few minutes of this, he just left the classroom without a word. We all sat there, confused, until a few minutes later the assistant principal comes in and explains that we've really upset our teacher. He made us believe we'd seriously ducked up. Then our teacher walked in and pretty much went, "Gotcha. That son of a bitch had our respect from then on." The most badass part of this is him managing to get the vice principal in on it as well. Clearly he had his boss's respect too. "Mr. Halbert, hey, Vice Principal Scott, could you give me a hand with something?" Vice Principal Scott: "Of course Mr. Halbert, I'm a friend first, boss second, probably entertainer third." I lay in bed that night and wept, a teenage boy who barely slept, but thought of how we made him feel, a thought that lacked the pure appeal it had some meager hours before, when then I grinned with glee and more, to see his frowning face appear, a face that held such doubt and fear, and grief and gloom and pain and woe, with eyes that slowly turned below. I wiped away a single tear. He whispered, "Gotcha," in my ear. My high school science teacher paused class to rip a student apart for bullying another student, called it out as soon as it happened, in front of everyone, and that bully never went near that other kid again. We'll always remember that. Actually, that reminds me of something similar. My maths teacher in school was like the coolest guy ever. He was like 6'4", mid-30s I guess, and had at one point been the British judo champion. He'd also been used in a Batman video game. He told us they'd put those balls on him and the computer analyzed his movements. He was one of the bad guys, I think. Anyway, he was cool as duck, would always tell us great stories and never had to raise his voice as everyone respected the duck out of him and wanted him to like them. Except for one time. It was a new term and a black student had left the school and he was telling us she had gone. One student pipes up with something along the lines of "Back to the J-Glare where she belong." My teacher jumped to his feet and yelled, "Get out." It was deafening and the whole class was in shock. We'd never even heard his voice loud, let alone that. His instinctive anger and natural response to defend someone who wasn't even there was something I'll never forget. That's one of the moments in your life when you think, that's the sort of person I want to be. The kid left pretty sharpish. Afterwards the teacher sat down, said, "I'm sorry you had to hear that," gave us some questions to work on and left the room. When they came back the kid looked like he had been crying. The teacher left the school the next year and was missed. When my year graduated he came back to give us our GCSE certificates. They couldn't have got a better guest of honor in my eyes. Edit. For anyone wondering, the game was on the original PlayStation in the 90s, and yeah, the bleep thing on Jungle is probably unnecessary, but it just didn't feel right typing a racist comment out. That is the teacher I want to be when I grow up. Too bad I am already 58, but I'll keep trying. A math teacher went to the hospital several times to visit a student who had been seriously injured in an accident. The teacher offered companionship, free tutoring, and genuine encouragement. I don't ever reply to posts, just read. With that said, I had a doctor as a kid that visited me in the hospital that was 50 or so miles out of his way when I broke my arm. I was flabbergasted when he walked in the room. We talked for over an hour. I still remember Dr. Adame to this day. He made me feel like more than a patient. That's a big deal. I had a bowel perforation about 8 years ago, and the surgeon that saved my life did any number of great things. Helped get my insurance to cover more, waived over $5,000 in co-insurance, visiting me in my GP's office, his wife, and billing it through her to avoid massive out-of-network fees. Semicolon, but the thing that stuck with me the most is when he saw my mom in the year 3 years later. He was walking through the year for whatever reason, noticed and immediately recognized my mother, and ran over to check on what he assumed was me. Turns out it was my sister this time around with her own bowel issues. So he looked at her chart, talked her through what they would be doing and why, and then took his leave. Dr. Kota, you are a ducking champion and have earned my lifelong friendship and respect. Edit to add, to clarify, Dr. Kota did not falsify any insurance documentation regarding payments. I would see his wife, my GP, for a normal visit with normal copay, and he would then come in after at no charge. He also fought a war with the insurance company to be able to perform my colostomy reversal as a continuation of care. Nothing but love for that man. Math teacher, I don't care if you have good grades or bad grades. If you work hard, I will work harder to make you pass. He worked hard for me. I passed. I had a sociology professor who gave us a do not fail checklist. Complete and you were guaranteed to pass. I also had a high school chem teacher who bet us all $100 that if we passed his class we would pass our first college chem class. He was just really awesome all around. He told stories about traveling the world over breaks. Got absurdly off topic to teach us random stuff. Had a physics lab where we got to throw eggs at him, and occasionally we had a class where absolutely nothing got done because we were having a discussion. He used to give out quarters for correcting him, or for anything done really well. He put up posters about his trips and gave us extra credit quizzes about them because he said being observant was really important in chemistry. Actually, there were a few really weird activities in that class. I will never forget the time he ate chalk to prove to us that it was the same stuff as in milk. He was brilliant, hilarious, and just a really incredible human being. Edit. Typo. Ever find out if he had to pay anyone $100? Told us a joke about his name before we could, and allowed us to eat during his classes because kids your age can't help being hungry all the time. As long as we did it quietly. Great guy. His whole attitude made all of us actually pay attention and do our best. One of my teachers' name is Mrs. Cocaine. Yes, pronounced like the drug, and made the first joke about it. I assume for detention she didn't give you lines. English teacher in high school asked where my homework was. Responded I forgot to do it, and he said to the rest of the class, why can't you guys be like scratch that? He doesn't come up with some excuse, he just tells me he didn't do it. LOL. I would always tell my teachers, I didn't finish it sounds a bit better than I didn't do it. Let me see what you did and I'll give you credit. Duck. I moved out of home during high school. It was stressful, to say the least. I started to fall behind in assignments. I would be absent for days at a time. I missed tests, etc. I ended up explaining the bare minimum of my situation to my English teacher, and their response always stuck with me. Just do what you can. Double quote. It may not seem like much, but right then and there, for 16-year-old kid who felt like simply living was a burden, it was everything. I actually have stress dreams about this kind of thing. Like I've been missing classes and falling behind for some reason. That feeling of dread is no good at all. Awesome of your teacher to understand. Second year of college and my mum was diagnosed with cancer. Hell of a ride. As a chick who never even boiled water before. Somehow I was adjusting to manage everything at home. Taking care of mum. Taking care of my assignments and what ducking not. I used to get late almost daily. Completed assignments waking up all night, which made me sleep in lectures the next day. One day I get called by this professor in her cabin. Was totally expecting to be grilled, but she hands me my assignment. I scored full marks, and says I don't have a daughter, but if I had one I'd wish to have one just like you. I was all manned up, but duck those onion cutting ninjas popping in the cabin out of nowhere. When I was a kid we had to purchase these red punch cards to get lunch at school. Unfortunately we didn't have that much money, so there were times where my punch card would run out and I wasn't able to eat for a while until we got enough money to repurchase another one. Why nobody in my family applied for assistance was beyond me. I had one teacher who noticed I wasn't eating every day and she would bring an extra sandwich and offer it to me whenever she saw that. I really didn't understand how kind that was when I was a kid, but obviously as an adult that was such an amazing gesture of kindness. In middle school I went through something similar. Would just go to my social studies class instead of the cafeteria for lunch. BC I never had food. A teacher started leaving a few dollars on my desk and would let me get lunch and eat with her. I ate with her most of my 8th grade year and I'd always bring her money that I got, like for day holiday, to try to pay her back. She'd just put it in her drawer and give it back to me later. I remember that to this day and I try to make sure I have change and 1s on me at all times for any of my students who need it, as well as keeping my bottom drawer stocked with snacks. My students always know they can count on me for food if they are hungry. Crazy how good deeds pass on to more good deeds. Thank you for helping your students. I had a principal in a new school I hadn't met yet because the first day of school at my new high school was my dad's funeral. He had no idea what I looked like, but he sought me out in the really crowded hallways and gave me a hug and his condolences. Never felt creepy, only cared about. He went on to local politics and became our mayor. Only time I have truly voted for the best person for the job and not the least objectionable. Edited to add, wow. Thanks for the upvotes. I've never had a comment blow up like this. Mr. Perry, if you see this, you earned my instant respect and kept it with your further actions. We need more like you. Your principal is good man. He go heaven. Principal to the moon. I had a physical education teacher who organized basketball, volleyball, handball and football tournaments, organized Olympic games for the local kids and taught us dancing on weekends, on his own, just for us kids, because we lived in a remote place without many activities and things going on. He was more than a simple teacher. I feel like this is the main reason that a lot of teachers in rural areas don't get credit for the amount of work they do outside of the classroom. Up here in Montana, many teachers have been known to actively go out of their way to help the kids, for the kids' benefit, whether it be coaching, tutoring, helping out in general, etc. I know many teachers everywhere do this, but after moving up here, living up here 10 plus years and seeing how much a rural community comes together to showcase the teachers, it made me gain a better appreciation overall. I sincerely wish teachers get more credit because there are some out there that just make that impact on someone and I enjoy reading about it. It makes me appreciate several of my past teachers from high school and college immensely more than I once did. Junior year of high school, English class. We were discussing a story we had read. One student, let's call him Carl, made a point. The teacher was dismissive and basically said Cole was wrong. The next day, after we took our seats, the teacher said, "Before we begin, I was thinking about what Carl said yesterday. I was wrong to dismiss it so quickly. Let's take a look at that again." He then went on to repeat Carl's point and initiate a conversation with the entire class. After the conversation, it became apparent Carl's point was indeed off base, but I was impressed the teacher publicly owned his mistake and went down the path he should have. Yesterday I said Cole was wrong. He's still wrong, but let's spend the whole day going into extensive detail about just how ducking wrong Carl really is. I mean, not in those words, but a good teacher will explain why something is wrong. It's part of teaching. When I was in the first grade, my mother gave me one of many really awful haircuts. The first day back at school afterward, the kids picked on me horribly, so much that I ran out and hid. The principal found me and we went back to the classroom and he asked me to wait outside for a minute while he talked to the class. He then walked me to his office and bought me a Coke. The next day, first thing in the morning, we had an assembly with the entire school and he walked up on stage with his head shaved completely bald and talked about bullying and the like. Some 20 years down the road he had retired and I ran into him at the local college. Shook his hand and said, "You probably don't remember me, but," double quote, "yes I do." He interrupted and said my name in the event. The man was and is a hero in my eyes. Mad respect to him. Did he remember you because you still have the same haircut? I remember my first math class in college. I didn't take any math my senior year of high school because I finished my math requirements my junior year. Anyway, the first math test hit me like a truck after never having to try in high school and I scored in the low 60s. The next 3 tests, I learned to study and got 398s in a row. The last week of class, the professor, who was a hard ass by the way and would kick you out for having your phone out, called me up to her desk after class and said clearly you were having a bad day that first exam. So don't worry about that grade because I won't count it. It really changed my view of that professor. I had an English teacher back in high school that offered a mercy to everyone in the class. You could drop one assignment or test for the year. As someone who has blacked out when doing a speech 2 years before, I just told her to remove me from the speech list. That is honestly a really good teaching method. Mitigates stress and doesn't ruin your grade if you have a bad day. Instead of shouting at my loud class for not shutting up before the lesson began, my history teacher decided to quietly tell the story of a pink elephant that wanted to be an astronaut. After a few seconds, people started to shut up and listen about the pink elephant. When everyone was quiet and listening, he stopped mid-story. As much as it made me respect him, why didn't you finish the story, FFS? That cliffhanger. What was the story? I remember parts. The pink elephant wasn't like the other elephants, so it had no friends and got bullied. So it decided to go to the moon because the moon looked lonely too. Thinking face. He was that kind of young, cool teacher everyone liked. He knew how to handle a class. Not take my shit. I was a pretty decent writer in school, able to pop stuff out pretty quickly that was superficial but sounded good. The first time I had a teacher hand my work back pointing out that I managed to compellingly fail to say anything was sort of a slap in the face that I didn't realize I needed. My first paper in grad school, the professor did the same to me. I had gotten all the way through a bachelor's degree on my writing ability. My senior year, last semester, I cranked out 9 20-page assignments, mostly bullshitting. Then I went to grad school and my first paper was supposed to be a 7-page historiography. Basically, an analysis of how historians have interpreted the subject over time, of a specific historical icon. Turned in my paper assuming I'd do well, and then the professor wrote F. Call me. We need to chat on it. He said I didn't really know how to find, interpret, and analyze source material, primary or secondary. The next several papers I wrote I worked really closely with him, and he's the one who taught me how to adequately research and make insightful, thoughtful commentary on my sources. Ended up with an A in the class, and his teaching really stuck with me. Bro, this is immensely inspiring. He cared about your learning journey and who you'd become, your potential. That's awesome. A supply teacher spent the day recovering my lost sticker collection. I'm sure it's done in other countries, but in UK primary junior schools, playtime becomes a trading hub on the playground for stickers. Anyway, one particular day I made a massive haul of stickers which I misplaced for a split second and it was gone. I was devastated and my teacher saw me in distress when I got back from class. My teacher promised she would get them all back for me. True to her word, she did. In fact, it turned out several people had made off with my stash of stickers and she spent her lunchtime tracking down every one of the children who had them, claimed them back and grilling the kids in turn to who else had my cards and getting them to see her. By the end of lunch she returned them to me all accounted for. For a supply teacher to do this, it was a seriously kind gesture, as most teachers would shrug their shoulders and carry on as if nothing happened. Edit. While this exploded fast, many thanks for the upvotes and rewards. A lot of people are asking me what a supply teacher is. It's just another way to call a temp replacement teacher when the normal teacher is ill or can't teach on that day. She was an absolute legend. We had her for a few weeks and she made learning damn fun. First she came up with a picture of an image. In our case it was Robin Hood, and each limb or part of the body had a reward on it. Small stuff like 10 minutes of playtime, for example. Bigger parts meant bigger rewards, as the students did well, good marks, good behavior etc. They got stickers and you stuck it on the picture. It was a class effort as you all worked towards the prizes, and for our young minds this was amazing as we never had that kind of incentive. Second, there was student of the day, the MVP of the class, and she would announce it at the end of the day in front of the class so that you knew that you were the MVP and everyone else knew it and how you earned it. She even had a dedicated corner of the chalkboard for your name. Again, as a kid it just blew your mind and you got perks like getting to sit on the chairs instead of the floor and of course, stickers. Yeah, I cried when I saw her go. When she got those stickers back, I was absolutely compelled that night to write her a thank you message and got my parents to sign it. Edit 2. Many thanks to the person for the gold award. Bro, that was so kind of her to put in her own time and effort. Red heart card suit. What the hell is a supply teacher? Like what do they supply? Genuinely do not know and have never heard this phrase before. Edit. Alright guys, I know what a supply teacher is. Sorry for asking questions I didn't know the answer to. One reply would have been fine. I told my English teacher about my unfortunate experience at my last school. Just stupid people treating me like crap. And he approached me after class and said, "Hey, I'm sorry that happened to you. You know there is a phrase in the English language that I think you ought to know. Duck them." Awesome story. Dude sounds like a total dude. But my favorite thing about this is how despite it being about a teacher using a swear word in conversation with a student, you censored the swear word when posting it on Reddit. We had an exam. Saying I'll test your honesty and your teamwork. I'm gonna leave the room once your exam starts. So we thought it's between honesty that we don't share answers with each other, and teamwork by cheating. We were so desperate, and cheated the exams. Professor came back 5 minutes before the time is up and asked, "So did you share your answers with one another?" And yes, we said. "Okay," he said. "Since you are all honest and you proved to me that you had your teamwork as a class, I will exempt all of you for this exam." Just here to point out she also exempted herself from correcting your exam. Both a good teacher and a 900 IQ teacher. I like it. I had a professor once state that she doesn't believe in trick questions. Students trick themselves up enough without the professor helping that along. She never did put trick questions. There are teachers who give trick questions. You'd have to be an egomaniac. Confession. I once gave a single question quiz after a unit on animal kingdoms. The question described a platypus without using the name and then asked the students to decide what kingdom the animal belonged in and explain why. I knew it would confuse them, but figured they'd take maybe 10 minutes to decide and write a response. As long as they matched the right traits with their answer, I'd give them credit, and I told them as much. After about 20 minutes, most had turned in their papers shakily and one student started crying. So I went over to talk her through it. She said, "I don't get it. They lay eggs. So I was thinking reptile or bird. But they have fur, and the milk, and they have webbed feet." I said, "Good, you know all the right facts. So just pick a kingdom and explain why." It still took her a while to choose which kingdom and write her answer. I promise I never gave that quiz again. I had a business studies teacher who used to be a mental health professional, so she knew the signs when my depression was particularly bad. For example, submitting work at 3 AM, and would always make sure I had eaten and offered me coffee and generally made her classroom a safe space for anyone. Cestine, if you're reading this, you're amazing. Oh shit. Turning in work at 3 AM is a sign of depression? Holy shit. I was depressed much earlier than I thought. Edit. Punctuation. I had been put in a lower set due to class capacity issues. He started off with a speech around what we would be learning this year and then assigned work to the class. After that he walked up to me and gave me a big book with the syllabus and told me he knew I'm too smart for this class and instead of following what the class does he wants me to work through the syllabus at my pace, faster than others being implied. And he would come and check on me after assigning work to everyone else. He said I could do lots or as little each class, but I needed to finish the book by the end of the year. Super duper motivated me to smash his class. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.